Komal is a fifth generation coffee planter, exporter and importer of specialty green coffee. Her goal is to showcase India's best coffee on the world stage. Tune into this podcast as we talk about specialty coffee farming. So for the next podcast, we have Komal from South Indian Coffee Company, and I'm so honored to have you on the podcast. We'll get to know more about coffee and about the journey. So I'm very excited for the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Adi.
It's my honor. So to start with the first question, how has been your coffee journey and where did it start?
So my coffee journey really began about 12 years ago when I first met my husband, my to-be husband then, in university. And I didn't know anything about coffee. I started off, we were in London and we studied there together. And that's when I got to know that India actually has these different coffee estates and India grows coffee. Because I met him and he has his family owns these coffee estates. And that's how I was introduced. So when I came down to India once, me and a friend of ours went out to his estate and his grandparents hosted us. And we saw this beautiful coffee estate. And I didn't know that this is how coffee is grown. So I was so excited to see this entire coffee plant and this entire journey of how coffee is grown. That was my introduction into coffee, really.
That's amazing, and it is one beautiful story. But yeah, like if I had to focus more on the learning, the growing part, how did you learn? So was it on field or like was it maybe from some institution?
Well, I haven't had any formal training in growing coffee, but so how we started off was because his grandparents have this coffee estate, and then his mom had just got her coffee estate, her part of the coffee estate. We started taking care of it. And I said that, people need to know about the story about how beautiful these coffee estates are and how wonderful this coffee is. So my learning really came from being on the field, being there on the estate. So when we were in London, we used to come in and out, and that was not enough. But when this pandemic happened, we were just sat here for the entire year. And now it's been a whole year that we are sitting here learning about coffee, learning about growing coffee, learning about processing. And this field is just vast. So it's how many ever years there is to it, we will still learn more and more about how to make coffee better. So I don't have any formal education, but I'm just learning on the field. So I started with, now this year it's been all about growing coffee and processing coffee. And the years before, when we started South India Coffee Company, it was more about showcasing our Indian coffees. And of course, it is now as well. It is about showcasing Indian coffees and how good Indian coffees are. And just focusing on processing and how good we can actually make the quality of Indian coffees in the specialty market.
This is beautiful. I totally admire you guys, and I know for a fact that you guys experiment a lot in your estates. So what type of experiments do you carry out in the past, and what type of experiments are you like figuring to carry out in the future?
So up till now, I think we've had a very up till I think we took over, the estate had one fixed process of how the coffee was processed, which is a fully washed coffee, and that's what we did for umpteen number of years. But after I think we started looking into processing, we looked at doing our coffees as a natural. In terms of experimenting, We've last year we tried a lot of different experiments. We did something with an excelsa, which was a double fermented, like a black honey. We did that. We've done some anaerobic fermentations last year as well. Again, understanding how drying works in different scenarios. So experimenting with drying, because last year we had a lot of rain, so we had to kind of now come up with an idea of what happens if there is rain during harvest. The and the whole crop cherry would get wet. So now we are experimenting with how we can make that, even if there is rain, we can actually mitigate the rain and make our coffee still taste good. So there are loads of experiments. I can assure you a lot of them don't work, which all come for home consumption. And then the good ones go out. But we keep experimenting, because until we experiment, we won't know what works for our coffees. So we love to kind of push our coffees further and kind of see how much more we can get out of our coffees, how much more flavors that are already there in the coffee can come out of it.
This is impressive.
So and like for example, I spoke about
Yeah.
Thank you. I for example, I spoke about excelsa. This is something that it's a boundary coffee. Not a lot of people are really consuming it, and in India there is a very small amount of it grown. So these are the kind of experiments that we should be looking at in terms of coffees that are kind of, I won't say neglected, but don't have a lot of importance. But these are the kind of, we can actually push our coffees in terms of experimenting with them and then putting it onto a larger scale with other varietals.
That's amazing. And it is so impressive to talk about all the experiments that you guys do. And I know for a fact that you guys even export it to UK. So I just wanted to know, like, how does global markets have a perspective about Indian coffee?
It's a very interesting question. So I think 4 years ago, when we started South India Coffee Company, there was the global perception is very was not great. I used to actually personally go up to roasters and ask them and talk to them about Indian coffee, and they used to come back to me. Some of them used to say, "Oh, India grows coffee. We didn't know, but we are probably the sixth largest growers of coffee." And or then they would say, and then I would go one step further and ask them, but we also have really good specialty arabicas, not just robusta. And they would be further shocked. So as years have gone by, I think Indian coffee has the global perception has changed, but there is a lot more to explore, because people need to understand that India can do great quality coffee, and India can do extremely high quality arabicas and robustas, and also a small percentage of excelsa coffee. So as long as we kind of adhere to our part of the bargain, which is giving good quality, high quality specialty coffee, there are definitely lots of roasters and importers out there who are willing to try out Indian coffee.
Nice. So, with the same question, I want to ask something on the Indian side. So, as youngsters, we feel that like whatever comes from foreign, maybe like be it shoes. So, if you say that shoes from Nike, which is a foreign brand, are perceived to be very high in quality. So, does a similar thing happens with coffee? Like coffee from maybe foreign countries are perceived to be of a higher quality, and like Indians do prefer higher quality coffee, maybe by Costa Rica or any other country, maybe by Brazil. Or do as Indians we do like we acknowledge Indian coffee and we are proud of Indian coffee. So like what do you think do Indians prefer?
I mean, I'm seeing a massive uptake in the specialty market here with Indian growers. So Indian growers, whoever is doing great quality coffee, they are almost always sold out with their specialty lots.
Hmm.
So I think that the Indian consumer knows that there is a great local producing, the local producers who are amazing, and youngsters like you who love to experiment. They will always kind of push growers to go and make sure that there are good quality coffees, and we as producers need to produce good quality coffees. So yes, I mean there is that perception of the Western is good or whatever, but
Mhm.
I personally think that the Indian consumer is, especially the young millennials and even the younger ones, are a lot more aware that Indian producers are doing great, good quality coffee.
Mhm.
Plus, it is a sustainable coffee. And again, a lot of people talk about traceability and things like that. But just by Indian coffee being, like for example, as a consumer, you have full traceability on where the coffee is coming from. So it can't get more direct trade than this. Like, the roaster is actually putting an estate's name or the producer's name on a coffee cup. And India is already doing it. The specialty roasters are already doing it. And there are more and more roasters coming onto the scene every day. So this is a great, I think the market is just booming, and the Indian consumer is definitely very aware of the fact that we are doing sustainable shade grown coffee, which is great for the environment, and people like you are actually encouraging us to push forward.
It's great. And I think the insight that I get from this conversation is that Indian coffee is booming and we have a great market ahead. The supply chain of coffee. So first it starts from the coffee grower, then it goes to the roaster, then the barista makes a cup of coffee and then it goes to the consumer. Okay, so in this process, if anyone maybe like makes a mistake or does a mistake, the whole chain breaks and the initial effort of the grower goes waste, right? So, what like are there any steps that are taken to make this perfect, or like what do people need to know about it?
I mean, it's such an interesting supply chain, right? Like at the end of the day, there aren't many products like coffee where it changes hands so many times, and the product at the end is, as a grower, you will never know what you, as a consumer, you're drinking unless you are really throughout the supply chain and you're growing the coffee and roasting it and brewing it and giving it to the consumer directly. Even then there might be a discrepancy because each barista will make a coffee their own way, each roaster will roast the coffee their own way, each grower will grow or process their coffee their own way. And again, going back to growers, you never know. So there are different things every year. You cannot have the same crop. It's an agricultural crop. Today we have rains, tomorrow, next year we won't have rains during the harvest. So the cup will change slowly, or it'll change. It'll be similar, but it won't be exactly the same. So and this is an agricultural product. It's going to change year on year. You don't get the same vegetable,
Hmm.
tasting the same exactly all the time. So that is one part of the chain. The second is the roaster. Now it's the roaster's prerogative on how you want to roast it. I send my coffee to 10 different roasters, and probably the 10 different roasters are going to roast it variedly.
Hmm.
One might put it in a blend, one might roast it light, one might roast it medium, one might roast it dark, one might roast it super dark. You don't know. Then you go on to the barista level where they are brewing, or the way they are brewing is completely different. Their styles are different, the water is different. It
Hmm.
can be, your machines are different. There can be so many different variables. So to say that you want to have the same exact cup of coffee that the grower has produced, I think it's a tough one to have any, like one particular thing and say that, oh, it probably, the closest it can be that is that, you get similar tasting notes from the coffee, which is where the Q graders come in. and they tell us that, okay, your coffee tastes of plums and strawberry, and it's sweet and clean and juicy. So if you're able to translate that into the consumer's cup, then I think that's where you kind of met a little bit of a line. Unless you kind of say, your coffee is tasting like chocolate and tobacco, then there's something gone wrong in the chain somewhere.
Right.
But if you have similar notes, then you've kind of translated it in a way that people want, which is consistent.
Right. And it's very interesting to know this, which brings me like, what is the vision and mission of your company, SICC?
So the idea of SICC was really to kind of push good Indian quality coffee onto the world map. So putting Indian coffee onto the world map is our mission, and making sure that the coffee gets a good price at the farm level is also a very important part, because sustainably growing coffee is tough. So it's very important that the grower gets a fair amount of money while we are pushing good quality Indian coffees onto the world market. So the vision is really to get great quality coffees out there, get everyone drinking it, and put Indian coffees on the map.
Right. And that's amazing, because I know for a fact that like with you, a lot of Indian farmers, roasters, baristas, growers are doing this wonderfully. And in the past, maybe like 2 years, where I've been in a close, like maybe I can say I kept an eye on what's happening and how I'm also learning. So I know that the graph is going up and the learning curve has been immense. So that's very great to know. Now I know a lot of things about SICC and its vision and mission. And if I had to know about like you, for example, I would like to know about you. So what are your top 3 values about being in this business?
Top 3 values. Well, again, I keep saying put Indian coffee on the world map, and that's like something that I keep pushing on. Second is, India has where the coffee belt is, we have very, very different types of coffees. So we can have a very sweet, jammy coffee, whereas we can also have a very floral, citrus coffee, and then you have these serious dark chocolate or malt tobacco and these kind of coffees, which encompasses a great variety of coffee. So that is the second thing that I would say, that it's not just India has a wonderful profile of coffees,
Right.
Which is what people need to kind of explore. And I think to be fair to the farmers, I mean, that is really important, to be fair to the growers throughout the supply chain, because that's important. At the end of the day, they are growing our coffee. We are growing our own coffees on the estate. We know how much effort it takes to grow coffees. And the only way we can actually survive these, the commodity market or fluctuating prices is by kind of getting good high grade coffees out there, but also getting paid for it.
Right. And for this fact, I know because I know I did some research on the prices of how coffee works. And if I had to say, for each cup that you buy from any of the coffee chains, maybe from Starbucks, you pay 1 rupee to the grower. For each cup of coffee, you only pay 1 rupee to the grower, and which is like quite, I can say, low, because when, like, I don't know where the major profits go, but yeah, it's somewhat maybe a sad part. But yeah, the main efforts, maybe that's the effort for maybe 8 to 9 months of maybe growing an Arabica, or 9 to 11 months of growing a Robusta, which is paid only rupee one for a cup. So, what are your
Yeah.
views on it?
I think I mean that's something that exactly. I mean, the entire point of SICC was essentially to make sure that the farmers get a bit of a premium and make sure that
Hmm.
it's a sustainable business. I keep calling it a sustainable business.
Hmm.
It's not we as growers are not going to have a golden bullet where people just you get
Hmm.
a lot of money for something,
Right.
but it is the if we have consistently we get quality a good quality coffee for a good price, that is when the growers will actually make the effort to push their coffees further.
Hmm.
So
Right.
with the commodity market prices being so fluctuating,
Hmm.
we don't want to put the effort in. So if you think about it, if I'm supposed to get, say for example, let's just take an example. If I
Hmm.
get 5 rupees year on year, I will be happy instead of getting 1 rupee on 1 year and 10 rupees on year two. So if
Right.
I get 5 rupees every year for 5 years, I'm going to be pushing my coffees further
Hmm.
than being in a fear of constantly being in a fear of the coffee prices or the commodity prices are fluctuating and I don't know how I'm
Hmm.
going to make a living.
Right. That's one of the part. And moving on to the last question, where can one find a coffee? Because I'd heard a lot of good things about your estate and your coffee, which maybe I want the listeners to try it out. So where can one find your coffee?
So currently, as we are actually at the end of the season and we're just about to get a new harvest, a lot of the coffees are sold out. But I will name out a few people who have our coffees. So firstly, there's Kapi Kotai, who does something called Mind Clone, which is from our estate. It's a
Mm.
selective natural. He does something called the Curve Ball, which is a black honey excelsa. There's somebody called El Boino. It's run by this lady called Manvi Gupta. She has something called When Cocoa Met Berry. That's another coffee. There's a new company called Tickery Coffee who's coming up, who also has our coffee. Um, there's there's the farm Chennai who's carrying one of our coffees in one of their blends. You can ask them for the details.
Mm-hmm.
There's handcrafted roastery in Bhopal who is just launching our coffee right now as we speak. If I miss out somebody, I think Adi will put it in the link below.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description of the podcast, and maybe I'm sure like you guys would be very surprised to try this coffee, because I'm sure that it will be one of the best coffees you had ever tried. So I'll be linking every account in the description. And moving on to the last part of the podcast, what we do is we do a famous five, where I'll read out a sentence and you have to maybe answer in a one word or maybe in a sentence. Depends on you. Okay. So the first one is uh, one thing that you would like to change about coffee.
Fluctuating prices of coffee.
My favorite brewing equipment.
It has to be the Flair Pro that I'm using right now.
Nice. And I know for a fact, because if you go to SICC's account, you will see a video of how you can brew using this equipment, and it's amazing. So, the next one biggest lesson from the past 12 months.
Be patient and keep learning, I think.
Nice. What is the best advice you have ever received?
I think it's my husband who keeps telling me you can't stop pushing yourself and you have to keep learning. So I think learning and keep increasing your knowledge is the best advice I've received.
It's amazing. And the last one is, if we had to create a law that everyone needs to follow in this world, what law it would be?
Drink more coffee.
Yeah, that's impressive, and that's the same law that I would like to like put in the world. And also something very interesting that SICC does is it talks to industry experts maybe every month. So there's one happening in the end of this month. So could you like give some details on it?
Sure. So we are talking to Mrs. Hamsini Appadurai. She's one of the directors at Sangameshwar Estate. So we are actually talking about the very famous estate that that they have. It's called the Veer Attikan Estate, and that's happening on the 30th of October. I will put in the details. I
Hmm.
will ask Adi to put in the details
Definitely,
for the talk as well.
definitely.
So these are interesting conversations that we like to have with industry experts and kind of shed some light on how things are changing or what the coffee industry is all about and some important topics that need to be discussed really.
Right, definitely. And for a fact that I'd been on some of your talks and they are actually wonderful. So if you are listening to this and if you have some interest about coffee and if you are in this workshop, you'll definitely love it and gain much more knowledge than what we talked on this podcast. So definitely do join to this webinars. I'll link all your accounts, SICC's Instagram account, your website in the description. So if anyone's listening and would like to reach out to you guys, they can definitely get in touch with you guys because you guys are such amazing, and what you do is something very respectful and making an impact in the Indian coffee market. So that's something very amazing. So thank you so much, and I'm extremely grateful to you guys for taking out time and being on this podcast. It's my honor to have you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adi, for having us. It was a lovely chat, and hopefully we can chat for some other new topics soon.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you.